With the release of Heresy, we have gotten a refresh for our Vault of Glass weapons. It has made them craftable. It has given them an origin trait. And going on this week, Vault of Glass is actually back as our featured raid, which means you can farm encounters over and over until that perfect god roll drops on you, which is why we're going to be going over our guide today, discussing how to farm each of these encounters, what drops from each of them, the challenges associated, because again, doing the challenges gives you double drops. And we're also going to be discussing the master mode version of this raid. But let's start things off with the different ways you're going to be looking to farm this raid. We have the normal version of the raid, which drops both the standard weapons and armor. This will be your path towards getting those weapon patterns for crafting, on top of a random chance for a weapon to drop with a red border. You also have the once a week Hawthorne quest that rewards a random red border upon completing all the encounters. Now, additionally, once a week, when you complete the raid, you can buy one red border of your choice from the Aegis relic chests. Now, I'm going to talk about the time lost versions of these weapons. Time lost weapons are essentially adept weapons from Vault of Glass, and they drop from the master mode version of Vault of Glass. And the beautiful thing is that it can drop with 3 perks in each column, so more opportunities to get the god roll. And even better than that is that if you enhance one of these time lost weapons, it will now give you the ability to go reshape the barrel perk and the magazine perk at the Enclave, which is beautiful, guys. This means you only have to get good traits in columns 3 and columns 4, as your mag and barrel can be completely changed. And I personally think the master version isn't bad at all. It's largely the same as the normal version. There are more champions, a handful of modifiers, including elemental and weapon surges. But for the most part, if you understand the normal version of Vault of Glass and you understand the challenges, and you can somehow find 5 other people who also understand the raid and the challenges, then you can easily handle master. Now, with all that out of the way though, let's start from the very beginning. When you first load up into the raid, you're gonna drop straight into the opening encounter, the Spire. Now, you're gonna notice that directly ahead, there's a giant Vex door, and our goal is to get that open. Now, there will be 3 Vex plates, one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right, from where you spawn in, that you're going to have to capture. Capturing all 3 plates will essentially start a spire, which builds in the center, which after a short period of time will open the giant door. Now, amongst the enemies that are going to be spawning here will be a Minotaur, which if it does step on one of the 3 plates, it will take control of and will stop the spire from building and require you to recapture the plates. So definitely melt those guys. And occasionally, while you're defending the plates, there will be a Cyclops that spawns on each plate. So make sure to dispatch them quickly. And as far as the master mode version, periodically the Minotaur that spawns will be an overload Minotaur. So be prepared for that. Now, for this encounter, there really isn't a defining optimal strategy. There's also no challenge, so you can get double drops from this. But once the spire is fully built, the door will now open and there's a chest just inside. Now, keep in mind, this chest is technically a secret chest, so it can drop anything you've received from the raid before, but only on your first clear. Now, you have a pretty straightforward path to the next encounter area, but if you drop off this ledge right here, you can find a secret path that will take you to another secret chest. Now, the end of each of these paths will be the Templar's Well, which is actually where the first 3 encounters will take place. Encounter 1 is the Confluxes, and this will task you with defending several Confluxes, one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right. Now, when you first jump down into the well, there will be one Conflux just below you, and as soon as you touch the ground, the encounter will begin, and the Templar will teleport in the back of the room. Now, you're gonna get several waves of Vex, which will begin to spawn and essentially march directly toward the Conflux. They're gonna attempt to sacrifice themselves. You must prevent this, or it will cause you to wipe. Now, the most important targets here are actually the Wyverns. It is their sacrifice alone that will trigger a wipe. Now, in a given wave, you're going to see a lot of standard Vex units, anywhere from 1 to 3 Wyverns. You'll see some specialized Fanatic units that drops these pools on their death, and if you do step into that pool, you'll get a debuff called Marked for Negation, which will need to be cleansed in the glowing circle at the center of the well. Now, the Templar will periodically perform a Ritual of Negation, which means if you're marked with that debuff and has not been removed, it will kill you. Now, after defending the Conflux for a couple waves, it will then disappear, and a bunch of Harpies and some Overload Minotaurs will spawn. You'll deal with these guys quickly, as the next phase of the fight is about to begin. 2 new Confluxes will now appear, one on the left of the arena, and one of the stairs to the right. Now, the fight plays out exactly the same, but now there are 2 Confluxes to defend, but once both Confluxes disappeared, you'll now move into the 3rd and final phase of the fight, which plays out the same once again, except now you have to defend all 3 Confluxes confluxes. Now, if you're playing this encounter on Master, the big change you'll notice is that the left and right conflux spawns will start spawning anti-barrier hobgoblins. The harpies will have arc shields, but the encounter itself is very straightforward, guys. Defend the confluxes, don't die. Now, the challenge for this encounter, though, is called Wait For It. It isn't super complicated, at least with the right setup. To complete this challenge, you must only kill the wyverns when they are sacrificing themselves to the conflux. Now, the best strategy for this is actually to get the wyverns like to the final 20% of their health, then let them ease up, start sacrificing themselves to the conflux, and then finish them off. Whether that be with a super, you can use things like Parasite, rocket launchers. Actually, a single Thunder Crash, even at full health, was able to take a wyvern out right here on Master when it began to sacrifice itself. What you want to do, though, is just make sure to give the wyverns a lot of space, kill everything else, but let them move up, and you need to see the animation of them beginning to sacrifice. And you'll know they're doing it when they'll have that particle effect on them. They're not shooting you anymore. That's when you need to go balls deep and take them out quickly. Now, the loot pool for the Conflux encounter on the normal version of Vault of Glass is Vision of Confluence, Bound Verdict, as well as Corrective Measure. However, the Master mode will only drop the time-lost version of Vision of Confluence. It's pretty nice if you're trying to target something specifically. Now, moving on to our second encounter, Oracles. Now, you can start this encounter by shooting the large Vex box, which is floating in the center of the room, but the goal in this encounter is to destroy a set of oracles in specific orders. Now, after the box is destroyed, the first wave of oracles will start to spawn. Now, there are 7 possible locations where these oracles appear, and it's the same 7 every single time, but these are the locations as shown here. You've got middle, you've got L1, L2, L3, then R1, R2, and R3. Now, during wave 1, 3 oracles will appear one at a time, with each oracle being in one of the 7 possible locations. And the order that they appear in is important, as you have to shoot them in that order. But they essentially ping up 2 times in the order that you need to shoot them in. After that, they will all spawn in, and you'll have to shoot them in that correct order. Now, you do have a little bit of time to do this, but don't take too long, and I would honestly advise communicating with your team. This is where comms is really important. You don't necessarily call out like, hey, I've got R1 or R2. Instead, you just say 1, 2, 3, 4. You essentially just call out the order of which you are shooting the oracle. And that way, when they do all spawn in and you shoot them in that order, you can call it out as you're shooting it. So someone calls out 1, that means that the next person needs to shoot 2, that person calls out 2, and so on and so forth. In my opinion, guys, I think comms here helps tremendously in this encounter, especially for the challenge. Now, if you mess up, they will explode and will actually mark the entire team for negation. If this happens, you then need to cleanse in the center, but you can only do this a limited number of times. Now, if you successfully destroy the oracles in the correct order, you'll then move on to the next wave. Now, each wave plays out exactly the same. The difference is that each wave will add 1 more oracle to destroy, with the final wave having 7 oracles to destroy. Now, while this is all going on, you've got non-stop ads coming in, whether that's goblins, minotaurs, and hobgoblins on the platforms just outside of the arena. And if you're just looking for a normal non-challenge clear, you can split your team up between ad clear and then just have 2 to 3 people as oracle poppers. Now, the people on oracle team, I highly advise using Xenophage. One shot pops it, makes it very, very fast. And if you're having to juggle multiple oracles, Xeno really is the best weapon to do it. Now, as far as the master version of this encounter, the thing to look out for is overload minotaurs. They're going to spawn periodically in place of the normal minotaurs. And then, of course, the hobgoblins on the outside, they really do hurt, guys. Be prepared for that on the master mode version. Now, the challenge for oracles is the only oracle for you, which is such a clever name. Essentially, this challenge requires you to complete the encounter without a guardian destroying the same oracle twice. And this is twice at any point, meaning if you shoot R1 on the first rotation and then you proceed to shoot R1 again at any other point, this will fail the challenge. Now, I think it's widely accepted that the best way to do this encounter challenge is just to assign players to an oracle position. For example, one player will take R1, the next will take R2, and so on and so forth. And our squad would actually have one player take L1 and middle, as one person will need to cover 2. This results in 5 players having 1 oracle position and your 6th player having 2. Now, the way you keep yourself from shooting the same oracles is that after each wave, you will rotate clockwise. So for instance, the player on R3 will then rotate to R2. And then after that wave of oracles, will go from R2 to R1. The player on L1 will go to L2 and then rotate to L3 afterwards. This maintains that you will never shoot the same oracle twice. Again, after each run of oracles, simply just rotate clockwise. Now, it's important to note that everyone on your team needs to rotate. It's not just the person that's destroying an oracle, everyone. That way you're not doubling up on an oracle, and now you just left an oracle out. Now the drops for this encounter on normal are Praedynt's Revenge, Vision of Confluence, and Found Verdict, with Master Mode dropping the Time Lost Praedynt's Revenge. Now once oracles are completed, you'll now move on to the final encounter in this arena, the Templar. This is the first boss encounter of the raid, and is a fairly simple encounter, especially with the right setup. Now to start this encounter, you need to pick up the Aegis relic that is spawned in the center of the room. Doing this will cause the Templar to spawn in. It will then trigger a wave of harpies and fanatics, and after a short period of time, 3 oracles will spawn in the same way as the previous encounter. Now they must be destroyed or will once again mark the entire team for negation. While this is happening, the relic holder will be slowly charging his super, and once it's full, the relic holder can then cast the super to shoot this charge of light that will break the Templar shield, which will then start DPS. Now during DPS, the Templar will attempt to teleport and regain his shield, and you'll see this happening when a red circle with a beacon of light appears somewhere in the arena. Now these locations are either to the left of spawn or to the right of spawn, and when you stand in the circle, it will then turn it blue, and after a short period of time, it will disappear, but it will block the Templar from teleporting, allowing your team to continue doing damage. Now the best player to assign for the blocking here is of course the relic holder, but keep in mind though, every time you block the Templar, he will detain 1 player in a Vex bubble. So make sure you shoot those out so that your teammates can continue doing damage. Now there's a few ways to optimize this encounter, guys. I feel like this is probably going to be the encounter many people just want to farm over and over, as you can quickly melt this boss with Lord of Wolves and a number of other shutdown supers. And when people get to farming, man, they want to find the most optimal path, which takes us to the challenge of this encounter. It's called Out of Its Way. This requires us to kill the Templar without letting him teleport, which is fantastic, considering that's exactly what we're doing. I think Curious for our Titans, Celestial for our Hunters is still really good. Sanguine Alchemy and Lord of Wolves also puts out. Again though, you probably just need to have 1 person with Lunafaction, just so you can maintain no damage fall off. But essentially, to really optimize here, you need your relic holder to equip an Eager Edge sword and essentially sword skate the rally banner. Now you don't have to do this, guys, but it will save you some time. Essentially, to do this, you want to start placing the rally banner, and just as the interact circle is about to complete, you want to pull out your Eager's Edge sword and use the heavy attack. Now, a successful attempt of this will look like this. This will then place the rally banner very close to the Aegis relic. And if you grab the rally banner and immediately pick up the relic right afterwards, it will instantly fill the relic super. Now, preferably the player that's picking up the relic will be, say, maybe a tether hunter who can fire their tether right off after dropping the Templar shield. But again, you don't even have to do that, guys. I promise you, with Lord of Wolves and burst supers, you'll be melting the Templar here very fast. The reason why filling up that Aegis relic super here is so good is essentially you can instantly pop the Templar shield and you can melt him before the first set of oracles even appear. I will say placing that rally banner will take a bit of practice, but it saves quite a bit of time, especially if you have a limited amount of time to farm. Now this encounter drops Fatebringer, as well as Vision of Confluence and Corrective Measure, with the Master Mode version dropping the Time Lost version of Fatebringer, which is one of the most iconic hand cannons, arguably in the entire franchise. And this one has some pretty nasty rolls. Now, after clearing the Templar encounter, you'll then move through the door at the back of the arena, and you're going to follow this path down into the Gorgon's Maze. Here, there will be a group of harpies called Gorgons, which if they see anyone in your team, they'll start to scream and then start a countdown that wipes your team. Now, if you do kill the Gorgon, that's alerted. You can avoid this. However, they are very tanky, so I would just avoid this altogether. There is a secret chest in this area, which requires you to shoot these Vex boxes. There's 3 of them, and this will unlock that secret chest on the far right side. In my opinion, the best way to get through the Gorgon's Maze is just to Chad walk it, fellas. I see so many people, man, every single time. People are like, you can sprint. It's okay. It's fine. Dude, why even risk it? Walk that thing all the way down. You can literally walk from the beginning to the end, never even having to touch your sprint button. You'll have a Gorgon right there to your left. Walk right past him. He'll never see you. Somebody always ends up breaking rank though. They start sprinting or something, or jumping, and then that alerts the Gorgons. Now, moving through this entire area, there will be one more secret chest that's on this ledge, which most of you probably already know about. But then through the door, this will take us to the 4th encounter. Now, there's going to be 2 portals, one on the left and one on the right. There's also going to be 2 plates that are present in the same locations, and standing on these plates will open a portal, with both portals being a gateway into a different version of the glass throne. Now, on the left, we have Mars, or the red room, and on the right, we have Venus, or some call it the green room. Now, in each room, there will be a conflux that you have to defend from spawning waves of Vex, including wyverns and a shielded minotaur called a Praetorian. Now, when starting the encounter, you'll want to kill the Hydra in the center of the room, which will then spawn the Aegis relic. At this time, though, 2 players should should open the Vex portals by standing on those pillars. And essentially now one player will need to be sent through each of the portals. Now every third wave of ads inside of the portals will spawn either a Wyvern or a Praetorian. And the Aegis Relic is what's needed to break the Praetorian shield. Essentially, you want to have the Relic user outside go into whichever portal room has the Praetorian spawn. Now when you teleport with the Relic, you will receive a debuff called Teleport Destabilize. Now this will prevent you from teleporting again until it expires. Now because of this, once the Praetorian is dispatched, the Relic user should drop the Aegis and take the place of the previous defender, and the other person will now take the shield back outside. Now once the shield has made it outside, they will receive the debuff, and another player outside will need to take it to the opposite portal to deal with the next Praetorian, which will spawn in on the other side. Essentially here, guys, you're just going to be passing the Relic back and forth to each other, killing Wyverns and taking out Praetorians that are shielded, with players outside occasionally needing to deal with overload Minotaurs. Now occasionally, there will be a Hydra that will spawn in the original glass throne, which will lock down both of the portals until it is killed. So make sure you deal with that guy, but continue passing the Relic and kill the Praetorians, and once 6 of them have been killed, the Confluxes will disappear, with a new Conflux appearing in the original glass throne. Now at this point, you just want to defend the Conflux from the incoming waves of Vex. There'll be 3 Wyverns that also spawn, and Praetorians that are shielded. Now once the 3 Wyverns have been dispatched, this essentially finishes the encounter. Now if you are running the Master Mode version of this, there will be a lot of Barrier Hobgoblins, at least during the final Conflux phase. So make sure you have something to deal with them. Now the challenge for this encounter is called Strangers in Time. This requires you to kill both the Wyverns and the Praetorians within 3 seconds of each other. It's not a super difficult challenge, but the health bumps in Master can make it a bit more challenging. So you definitely want to make sure the Wyverns are low, and then have either the Wyvern player or the Relic player give a countdown so that you kill both of them at the same time. Now similar to our first encounter challenge, burst weapons are good here. Parasite is nice. Supers like Thunder Crash is good. If you do find yourself needing to stall for time with the Praetorian at any point though, Stasis can actually freeze them. Bleak Watcher is pretty nice here. Hell, even Cryoesthesia. So feel free to lean into Stasis if you need to. Now keep in mind though, that the Praetorians and Wyverns that spawn in the glass throne, those are not part of the challenge. It's just the Praetorians and Wyverns that spawn inside of the portals that you have to kill at the same time. Now, this is the encounter that you're really going to want to farm Master on if you're trying to get the Time Lost Hezen's Vengeance. This is our rocket launcher, guys, and yes, it's got some crazy rolls. The Time Lost origin trait on this thing makes it busted, and you can imagine if we get even a single artifact mod going into Frontiers or whenever that assists rocket launchers. Hezen's Vengeance here is going to put out. Now, finally, we have made our way to Atheon. This encounter seems daunting at first, but it's quite easy and really just builds on everything you've already learned. Now to start off, you want to destroy the Vex box in the center platform, which will then start the encounter and will spawn in Atheon. Now after a short ad clear phase, Atheon will teleport 3 players at random into one of the 2 portal rooms, either Venus or Mars, of which the players that got teleported need to make that call out. That way the players outside know which portal to open up. Now the players inside will need to grab the Aegis Relic that spawns in front of them. They'll also need to kill the ads in the center room, and each of the players teleported inside will be given a debuff called Marked by the Void. Now while this debuff won't kill you, it will eventually black out your entire screen, which is why you need to block with the Relic. This will cleanse your teammates and yourself. Now this doesn't completely remove the debuff, so the Relic user will need to periodically just cleanse, as well as doing one more cleanse when you exit the portal. Now the players outside will need to open the portal for the side that corresponds to the inside players' locations. Now around this time, Atheon will summon 3 red oracles in the center of the room, and he'll summon them in a specific order, similar to Encounter 2. Now everybody labels these differently, guys. For me, it's simple. It's close left, close mid, close right, far left, far mid, and far right. Some people do like numbers though. You could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To each their own though. Now the outside players will need to call out the order of these oracles, and then the inside players will need to shoot them in that order. If they do this incorrectly, this will wipe the fire team. Now after each wave of oracles, the inside team will have to deal with some Praetorians, some Hobgoblins, while the outside team will be dealing with waves of Supplicants, amongst some other ads. But there will be 3 waves of these oracles, and upon destroying the final oracle in the 3rd wave, that being the 9th oracle in total, the damage phase will begin immediately. Now you've got 30 seconds to deal damage, noted by the Time's Vengeance buff, before Atheon becomes immune, and you'll have to run the mechanics once more. I recommend that the players inside the portal destroy the oracles while standing near the exit portal, which will allow them to escape as fast as possible and get into the damage phase immediately. I also recommend cleansing when you get outside of the portal. That way you're friends don't accidentally get the debuff again, and they can see what they're shooting at during damage. Now, in my opinion, the best place to really group up is near the portal that the players are exiting out of. We used to do the middle a long time ago, but the portal here is just really good, especially if you're using close range weapons. You can well in front of the portal and then proceed to go to Pound Town. Now, I would recommend having at least one person with lunafactions, and really you could just do 1 div and 5 Lord of Wolves. Do triple solar surges, sanguine alchemy, Titans with Curious, Hunter with Celestial, pretty much what you did before. You could do Queenbreaker's Bow as well. However, there's an issue right now where Divinity will override the particle debuff, resulting in the lower 15% debuff taking priority. Bungie recently fixed the stacking issue with particle, and so the 30% debuff will override it, but Divinity is still bugged, so do keep that in mind. Now, someone will have to still juggle the Aegis shield, but they can do damage. They can drop the shield, pop a couple shots off, and then pick the shield back up. Main thing is to prevent the drop timer from reaching 0. Essentially, if anyone drops the shield at any point, it will start a 10-second countdown that will wipe that team if it hits 0. And you essentially just need to refresh that by picking up the shield during damage phase. You'll wait half a second, and then you can drop it again. Now, one final mechanic that you need to be wary of is detain. Halfway through the damage phase, Atheon will attempt to detain one player who will be notified by receiving the imminent detain debuff. Now, for other players, this detain debuff will manifest as a white outline around the player. They'll also make like a noise that increases in pitch. Main thing is that person needs to get the hell away. Once that debuff though hits 0, that player will be detained. And this works similar to like the Templar detain, but with an extremely important difference. Anybody who is standing too close to the detained player will also be detained. So if that person doesn't get away, it literally will screw the entire damage phase. So make sure they bounce off. You guys can then pop as detained, and he can rejoin you guys to continue doing damage. Now, the master version of this encounter has barrier hobgoblins that spawn with the ad waves inside of the portal, and the Harpies themselves will have arc shields. Now, the challenge for this encounter is Ensemble's Refrain. This requires each guardian only destroy 1 oracle per oracle wave. Now, the challenge is honestly the easiest. Just make sure everyone calls out, whether they'll have the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd oracle each wave. The relic holder on the inside team will have to drop the shield at some point and destroy an oracle, but then they can just pick it right back up and start cleansing again shortly after. Now, the drop table for this encounter includes Praeton's Revenge, Corrective Measure, Hezen's Vengeance, and Vex Mythoclast, with the Master Mode version dropping the Time Loss Corrective Measure. Now, Eagle-Eye players will probably notice that despite there being 6 different Time Loss weapons, there are only 5 challenges and encounters. This is because our final Time Loss weapon, Found Verdict, can only be initially obtained from completing all of the Master challenges and then claiming its associated triumph, Maestro Glasser. Now, for follow-up drops, Time Loss Found Verdict can only be purchased from the Aegis Relic chest at the end of the raid. Now, the Vault of Glass loot refresh is one of the strongest we have ever seen in Destiny 2. The Origin trait alone is incredibly powerful, as it reloads and doubles your mag capacity for 20 seconds when you cast your super, and it grants bonus super energy on final blows. These weapons are incredibly powerful. We are going to be breaking down the gun rules for each of these later this week. All I can say is that this raid is 100% worth redoing again. It's 100% worth learning these challenges, and if you could do the Master Mode version and snag some of these Time Loss variants, you will be greatly rewarded. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.